As we prepare ourselves for this talk, let us remember that the earth is full of spiritual beings that are eager to be recognized, that are eager for us to work together with them to heal the earth. I do behold the world in which there shines the sun, in which there gleam the stars, in which there lie the stones. The plants they live and grow, the beasts they feel and live. And human to spirit gives a dwelling in his soul. I do behold the soul that lives within my being. The Spirit of God lives and weaves in light of sun and soul, in worldwide space without, in depths of soul within. To you, O Spirit of God, I, seeking, turn myself, that strength and skill and grace for learning and for work in me may live and grow. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to SpiritCON 2020. My name is Ion Mapa, and for the next 45 minutes, I'll be talking to you about spiritual agriculture. Now, a little bit about myself before we begin. I've been working with the earth. I've been practicing biodynamic farming for the past 10 years. I've also been teaching this in schools, and the reason I wanted to share this with you is because over these 10 years of working with the earth, I have realized that a connection with Mother Earth, connection with the spirits of nature, is an enriching and powerful relationship that every human being needs to cultivate in order for us to reach our fullest potential, in order for us to truly understand that we are spiritual beings. We need to be able to connect with the spiritual beings around us. And one very good way of doing this is through spiritual agriculture. If the world is able to recognize that agriculture should be not just a physical but a spiritual endeavor, then we can make gigantic changes and the world can truly transform. I hope you're excited as I am to be sharing this with you. And without further ado, let's learn what exactly spiritual agriculture is. The verse I began this talk with is the morning verse from the Waldorf School. Now, for those of you who are familiar with it, Waldorf School is a type of education started by Rudolf Steiner. Rudolf Steiner is an Austrian philosopher, and he was also a clairvoyant. And his philosophies, anthroposophy, became the root of spiritual science. So Rudolf Steiner is the father of spiritual science, Waldorf education, Camp Hill movement, homeopathic medicine, and of course, the biodynamic agriculture movement, which is the most widely practiced form of spiritual agriculture today. I began with that because I think that every morning it is important to recognize our connection with the earth, our connection with everything around us. In order for us to practice spiritual agriculture, it has to begin with the recognition that we are spiritual beings and that spirits reside in nature and that we are able to create a connection and relationship with these spirits in order to heal the earth, to heal the soil, and to heal the plants, which in turn nourish us. Because that's what spiritual agriculture is all about. It's understanding that the act of planting is not merely a physical act, but it is a spiritual communication between you and the earth, between you and the plants. And there are many ways of doing this. Spiritual agriculture has existed as long as humanity has. In many ways, we have forgotten spiritual agriculture. If you look back at the indigenous people around the world, the method of agriculture that they practiced was very spiritual in nature. They did not rely on chemicals or high-tech machinery. What they relied on was their relationship with their gods, their relationship with the energy and the spirits around us. And through this relationship, they knew how to plant in such a way that made the earth happy, that made the plants happy. And through this act of spiritual planting, they never needed food. They never wanted for food. Their harvests would come back so full and so healthy every year. This was because they had a direct channel to the spiritual world, and the plants would tell them where they needed to be planted. The earth would tell them when it needed to rest, what to plant where, what to plant next to another plant. I'll give you an example. For example, the Hanobo Mangyan tribe here from the Philippines, they have this practice in which they have their hill where they live, and every year they would burn one part of the hillside. And as the years go by, they would rotate the portion that they would burn, allowing the soil to regenerate, and afterwards they would plant on those portions of the hill. 7 years later, they would return to that one part, burn it, allow it to rest, as they planted and moved around the hill. When modern scientists discovered this practice of theirs, they kind of shoved it away for a minute, because slash and burn, or the act of cutting down large amounts of vegetation and burning them, had been recognized around the world as a bad practice. It was not something that we wanted to do. But these Hanobo Mangyans had figured out a way to do it, in that it was not a damaging practice, but it allowed the earth to regenerate and heal. And it was through their connection to their spirits that they knew to do this. Through observation of the earth, through intuition, and yes, through the nature spirits telling them what needed to be done, they were able to create a practice that was unique and worked for them. So another practice of spiritual agriculture is the Three Sisters method. This is from Native America. Again, these revelations come to these people through a relationship with the natural spiritual world. In the Three Sisters method, the Native Americans begin by planting a corn stalk. As the corn stalk grows, they plant at its root a beanstalk. As the corn stalk grows, the beans wrap around the corn, fixing nitrogen into the soil and using the corn stalk as its trellis. And later on, they would plant a squash seed at the bottom of these two plants, and the squash plant would spread, protecting these two from pests and keeping the soil well covered and moist. This amazing practice of planting these three crops together just shows that if you are really connected with the needs of your plants, if you are connected with what the earth is telling you to do, you can create some marvelous and amazing agricultural practices without the need of science or high-tech machinery. And you know what? These practices work. These tribes would harvest tons of food per hectare, much higher than the yields that you would get from conventional agriculture. So I hope I've given you an idea of how spiritual agriculture had been a backbone of humanity since the ancient times. However, as time has gone by, population explosions and the birth of technology and chemicals has created an industry in which many farmers no longer remember these spiritual practices. So this is where the problem begins. Modern agriculture is one of the most damaging problems we have in the world today. The way we produce our food, whether it be vegetables, grain, or livestock, is such a damaging practice to the earth. Let me quickly run down some of the ways that modern agriculture is causing so much damage to our planet. Number one, modern agriculture is highly dependent on chemicals. There are three chemicals that are very often used One is chemical fertilizers. These are synthetically derived substances which provide the plant with the nutrients that the physical body of the plant needs to grow. Second, herbicides. Herbicides are poisonous chemicals used to kill weeds or unwanted plants. And third are pesticides. Pesticides are also poisonous chemicals used to kill unwanted insects. What's the trouble of using these three chemicals? Number one, the fertilizers. While they provide synthetically created nutrients for the plant's physical body, they damage the soil. They kill the microorganisms and the living, breathing energy of the soil and make it a dead place for you to plant. Because of this, plants grown in chemically fertilized soil become more and more dependent on these fertilizers every year. They're just like a drug, to be honest. Number two, the herbicides. Herbicides are specially developed chemicals which kill the unwanted crops but leave the genetically modified crops which are built to resist the herbicides still standing. The problem with these herbicides is that they are killing and destroying the natural indigenous plant life. And third, we have pesticides, which of course is nasty because it's killing all the natural insects around. And imagine, if you have a chemical that is so strong that it can kill plants and insects, and you have them sprayed on your food, what are we taking into our bodies? A little bit of trivia about farm chemicals. The original pesticides and herbicides were actually developed after World War II. When the UN banned chemical warfare, all these chemicals that they devised to kill soldiers in the trenches, they repurposed as pesticides and herbicides. Imagine, they spray those things on our food, on our children's food, and we take it into our body. No wonder all sorts of new diseases like cancers have arisen in the past 100 years. This rise of cancer coincides with the rise of conventional agriculture, and this is not a coincidence. If you look at livestock in conventional agriculture, the picture is just as terrible. Hundreds and thousands of animals are packed into spaces that are small as possible, in inhumane conditions, and force-fed unnatural food in order that they grow as quickly as possible. They are harvested in inhumane ways, and before they die, they pump their bodies full of panic and stress hormones, and this remains in the meat until you eat it. So, I don't want to take too much talking about the problems of conventional agriculture, but suffice to say, it really is a big aspect of our life. Food production is, if not the most important industry in the world today. And it is so much of a problem right now. And that's where spiritual agriculture has to come in. Now, of course, there are methods of farming which we are beginning to adopt. Organic farming, permaculture. These are wonderful practices that no longer use chemical pesticides or herbicides, that are more mindful about the way that they grow plants. But there are still problems. Even with organic agriculture, another big problem is that of monocropping, in which you grow just one plant over hundreds and hundreds of hectares. Nowhere in nature are 100 hectares dominated by a single species. These methods of agriculture are disrupting the environment. They are disrupting the ecosystem. We are killing natural and indigenous species of plants and insects, and we are transforming these once rich spaces into deserts. Organic farming is a step towards the solution, but it's not enough. Here I have a book This one is called Permaculture by Dave Mollison. This is a nice book to pick up if you want to learn a little bit more about how to create a natural ecosystem while doing agriculture. While permaculture provides a very nice systemic practice on a physical standpoint, it is still missing one very important aspect, and that is spirituality. Why is spirituality so important for our agricultural practice? Well, first of all, we need to remember that everything is connected. That our spirits have a very powerful connection to the spirits of the earth, to the spirits of the plants around us. And if we do not remember this connection, if we do not nourish the spiritual forces in our soil, if we do not nourish the spiritual forces in our plants, then how are these things going to provide spiritual nourishment to us? I'd like to talk to you very quickly about praying before our meals. This is something that many of us do. We like to, before a meal, send feelings of gratitude, feelings of love, positive energy into our food. And there's been a lot of research done on this. For example, the Baxter effect is when intention, when spiritual energy is able to change the molecular structure of a physical object. This has been done with water, and for now we do it with our food. We pray over our food, we send it good intentions in the hope that this food will then become more nourishing to us. But imagine, what if we did not simply give the spiritual nourishment to the food? What if we gave spiritual nourishment to our soil? If we gave spiritual nourishment to the vegetables, to the seed as it grew, spiritual nourishment every day as the seed becomes a plant, as the plant becomes a flower, as the flower becomes a fruit, and as the fruit finds its way into our body, all the spiritual energy that we've been giving to this plant becomes spiritual nourishment for us. But for now, many of the agricultural practices are still focused on the physical aspect of the plant. What we need is to remember that everything is connected. We are all one. The spiritual energy that we give the soil, that we give the plants, is necessary for our food to give us spiritual nourishment as well. And without this connection, without this recognition that we are one, we will continue to follow practices that are one-sided relationships with the soil, with the earth. We cannot stick in this mindset that the earth and that the soil and that the plants are things for us to cultivate, to take, to, abuse. We have to remember that we need to live in harmony with everything around us. And through this relationship, we will see it manifested in these wonderful vegetables, wonderful fruits that charge us not only with physical nourishment, but bring our life force more in tune with the world around us. This is why spiritual agriculture is so important. Whether it be on a large-scale farm, on your home garden plots, or even in the little, container gardens that you have in your condominium, treat these plants with love. Give them spiritual nourishment every day, and they will treat you with love as well. So, you must be really excited now to learn how we can practice spiritual agriculture at home. Alright, so the first thing you need to do is, of course, be completely open. Open your minds, open your hearts Open your spirit to the idea that nature is full of spiritual beings. You know, we've always had names for them like fairies, duende, other things like that. It's not important. We need to recognize that everything has a spirit. Trees have spirits, the wind has spirits, the soil has a spirit. And we need to remember that our spirit can connect with these spirits, can communicate with them. This recognition is the number one thing we need to be spiritual farmers. That we have a spirit, that everything has a spirit, and that our spirits can communicate with one another. So that's the first thing you got to do. Once you've opened your mind and opened your heart to the idea, then you need to stock up on a little bit of knowledge. Just like any spiritual practice, we need to have a knowledge base for it. For example, if we take sound healing, if we did not know the different frequencies that we need to set these tuning forks to, we would not be able to do sound healing. In crystal healing, if we were not aware of the properties of various minerals, we would not be able to do crystal healing. So you get my point, that even a spiritual practice needs to come from knowledge. So this is the second step. Bring your knowledge up to speed and try and understand what the plants need and what nature needs. To begin with, you just have to learn two things. Number one, you have to learn the needs of each specific plant. A plant is an organism just like a dog or a cat or a hamster or a fish. You need to know what kind of environment it likes, what kind of nourishment it needs. You need to know the needs of the plant in order to take the best care of it. Some plants like dry soil and a lot of sun. Some plants like wet soil and a lot of sun. Some plants like dry soil and not much sun. And you know, the variations go on and on. Some plants like onions and carrots need loose soil so that their roots can grow. Some plants like eggplants like nice tight clay soil. So by learning the needs of our various plants, we are able to care for them in the best way possible. You can pick up some books that can help with this. For example, The Market Gardener is a wonderful book. Talks all about the different plants and vegetables that you can cultivate. Also talks a little bit about the physical preparation of the soil. You can also look up farmers' almanacs or ask a farmer. You know, word of mouth is always very good for farmers, and you can always find an experienced gardener or farmer with wealth of knowledge on the needs of each specific plant. And in the modern age, we're actually very fortunate as well that you could actually go on the internet, and very often you'll find quite accurate posts or quite accurate articles about the needs of each specific plant. But remember, number one, start with knowledge about the plant that you are going to nourish. And number two, you need to be able to create a natural environment. This is why the most important thing with spiritual agriculture is to learn how to create living soil. Someone once asked me, is it still spiritual agriculture if you are doing the spiritual practices but using chemicals? I told him, no, I do not consider that a spiritual agriculture. Because in order for us to really truly be practicing spiritual agriculture, it has to be a two-way relationship. We can't, simply expect the earth to give us back our nourishment, our love, if we are not healing it in return. You can do all the rituals, all the calendar planting, which I'll talk about later, but if you are not treating your soil with love, it cannot be a spiritual agriculture. It cannot be a one-way relationship. So how do we treat our soil with love? We allow it to grow in the most natural way possible. And this is by creating a living soil. Soil is alive. It's not just a medium to hold water and chemicals. A soil is a living, breathing organism in its own. Imagine, in a handful of soil like this, there are more organisms than all the human beings on the earth combined. We need to create a living soil full of microbes, mycelium, bacteria, worms, and all sorts of other insects. Because as farmers, we don't have to care for the plant. We have to care for the soil, and the soil will do the rest. How, you might ask, do we create living soil? It's through composting. We need to take our organic matter, allow it to break down, allow it to return to chaos, to return to its most base form, which is dirt, soil, earth. And this living soil is full of bacteria, microbes, worms, mycelia, and life force, which it then transfers into the plants. There's no need for chemical fertilizers, for pesticides, for herbicides. When you create a natural living system by creating healthy living soil, you give your plants what they need to be healthy, what they need to survive. And you do your part in healing the earth. And it is through this act of healing, of giving back to the earth, through creating living soil, that we begin our relationship with the spirits of nature, with the spirits of the earth. So again, recap. Number one, be open to the idea that nature is full of spirits that surround us every day. Number two, learn the needs of each one of the plants that you intend to cultivate. And number three, give back to the earth by composting and creating living soil so that we can establish a harmonious relationship with the spirits of nature. Okay, now, in spiritual agriculture, just like any other spiritual practice, we have rituals. Now, it does have an effect when every movement that you make, every shovel into the ground, every planting is full of spiritual intention. And yes, definitely, every moment that we live on this earth would be better served if we carried spiritual intention and spiritual consciousness in it. However, rituals are humanity's way of really supercharging moments, people, objects with spiritual power. Throughout history, rituals have been humanity's way of opening a portal into the spiritual world and allowing spiritual energy to flow back and forth between our world and theirs. And in biodynamic agriculture, we have rituals as well. Now, many of these rituals revolve around what we call biodynamic preparations. A biodynamic preparation is a substance that has been prepared in such a way that cosmic physical energy has entered into it. You can easily buy these substances online. There are many sites that deliver biodynamic preparations. And if you have the materials at home, you can make them at home as well. Let me introduce you to two of the most basic and most widely used biodynamic preparations. Number one is the cow horn manure, or biodynamic preparation 500. What we do is we take the manure from a mother cow, and only a mother cow will do, as a mother cow has these life-giving forces that no other cow has. We follow the cow and we catch its manure fresh before it hits the ground. We then pack this manure into the horn of a mother cow as well, and we bury it under the earth for 6 months. During this time, it allows the cosmic forces of the universe to supercharge this manure in the horn. We dig it up after 6 months, and then you take a single pinch of this cow manure and put it into a bucket of water. We then stir the bucket of water under the open sky for 1 hour, creating a vortex in one direction and then reversing the vortex. By doing this, we allow cosmic energy to enter into our water. And then afterwards, this water can be sprinkled, and a single bucket of water is good for an entire hectare. We must remember at this point, we are not working with physical substances. Very often when I demonstrate this biodynamic preparation to a conventional farmer, they would ask, how is it possible that you get any nutritional content from such a small amount over such a large space of land? And what they need to wrap their head around is that it is not a physical substance, it is not a physical process which we are doing. It is a spiritual one. We are not working with substance, we are working with energy. We are taking cosmic energy and supercharging this water to such an extent that a few drops will provide spiritual health to how many square meters of earth. We also have the biodynamic preparation 501. If you want to prepare this, you need to grind a quartz crystal into a smooth, fine powder. Pack it into that same cow horn from a mother cow, and again bury it under the earth for 6 months. When you dig it up, mix it into a bucket of water for 1 hour, and then put it into a spray bottle. When you spray this on the leaves of your plant, it increases warmth and light absorption and allows the plants to grow with more vitality and strength. These are just a few of the practices that we do in biodynamic farming. If you'd like to hear about them in more detail, I will be giving a course in the Philippine Academy of Intuitives in the coming months, and we will go through all the biodynamic preparations, how to make them, and how to use them effectively in your farm or your garden. You can also go online and do some research if it interests you. The other biodynamic preparations are for use in a compost heap. We put these into the compost heap to allow the cosmic forces to break down each part of the compost heap into chaos, into its original form, so that it may be used again. I've done these rituals in front of clairvoyants, in front of people who can see spirits, and they've said when we apply the biodynamic compost, when we stir the cosmic energy into the bucket, they see the spirits of nature dancing around us, smiling with the happiness, with the joy that we are once again working with them to create a better earth. I do not have the gift of seeing these spirits myself, but it was very enlightening and enlivening to hear from these clairvoyants who really can see that these rituals bring the spirits of nature into our practice, bring the spirits of nature into the earth that we work with. See, I'm getting goosebumps just now talking about it, and that's probably the wonderful friends I have around here who are happy as well that I'm sharing this with you guys. Alright, the next biodynamic practice I'd like to share with you is the biodynamic calendar, or the sowing calendar. This is a calendar which tells you when to plant your seeds. First of all, the calendar indicates when to plant a seed. It does not indicate when to transfer a seedling. It does not indicate when to put a cutting into the ground. It applies only to seeds. And why seeds? Because in a seed is the potential for infinite seeds. In a single seed, you have the potential to create an infinite number of plants. So imagine that infinite potential within a single seed, and the moment it touches water, a cosmic process begins. So when we use this sowing calendar, we must remember that it is when you germinate the seed, whether you're germinating it by placing it in water or germinating it by putting it straight into soil. You have to make sure that the moment the water touches the seed is what is indicated in the calendar. Alright, so let's take a look at the calendar and how it works. When you open the biodynamic calendar, you'll see days on it, just like a regular calendar, and alongside these days, you will see an indication of what you should be planting on that day. You'll have, for example, a fruit day. Now, fruits, by the definition of a farmer, is anything that begins as a flower and then turns into some kind of pod or some kind of fruit. So it doesn't have to be limited to bananas, mangoes, oranges, etc. A fruit could be an eggplant, it could be a bean pod like sitaw or sigarilyas, it could be a tomato or an okra. These all count as fruits. We also have root days. So root crops are things like carrots, onions, shallots, potatoes, kamote, beets, and more. And we also have leaf. Leaf day are the crops in which we harvest the leaves. For example, kangkong, lettuce, kale, things like that, petchay. And so that's the flower day, root day, and leaf day. So, my mistake, sorry. You have the root day, the fruit day, the leaf day, and lastly, the flower day. Flower day. We plant things on flower days in which the crop is the flower. For example, sunflowers, or if you want to plant certain ornamental flowers, this is the day to plant them. If you like to plant certain medicinal flowers, this would be the day that you germinate the seed. So, when we take a look at the biodynamic calendar, it shows you on which day you should be planting either your root crops, flower crops, leaf crops, or fruit crops. Sometimes during the middle of the day, it will change. So if you look, it might say root day until 8 a.m. and then 9 a.m. forwards, it's flower day. Or it might be leaf day until 2:30 p.m. and onwards, it will be fruit day. So please pay special attention to these different days when you're planting your crops. The biodynamic calendar is so easy to use, and the reason that we have these particular days is that biodynamic experts all around the world observe the movement of the moon, the stars, the cosmos, the planets, and all the heavenly bodies. And through this, they are able to determine on which day the cosmic energies coincide to unleash the greatest potential from your seed. So once again, using the biodynamic calendar is as simple as taking a look, finding the day which shoots the plant you're going to grow, whether it be root, leaf, flower, or fruit, and then germinating the seed during that particular day. Alright, so we've talked a little bit about the practices that we can use, the biodynamic preparations, and the biodynamic calendar. We've also talked about the importance of recognizing that nature is full of spirits and that we have to know the needs of each particular plant, and most importantly, learn how to create living, breathing soil. There are many more modern spiritual agricultural practices. For example, the Agnihotra practice, which comes from India, is the act of taking a copper pyramid, filling it with cow dung mixed with ghee, lighting it in the middle of your farm every day, and saying mantras with it. This act allows a protective shield to be raised over your farm, saving it from any negative energies or pollutants that might be coming its way. So these are some of the practices that have been tried and tested. The biodynamic practices, for example, have been tried and tested all around the world for 100 years. And what's so amazing is that biodynamic practices have been shown to consistently produce wonderful, rich produce in all climates. It has been shown to work in deserts, in rainforests, in swamplands, on plains and on mountains. No matter where you are doing the practice, biodynamic agriculture produces wonderfully healthy food, not just for the body but for the spirit. And this is because we are not limited to physical practice, but we are creating a spiritual connection with the earth. So we're running out of time. I just want to share with you the last spiritual practice that you can use in agriculture. And this is to communicate with your plants. Yes, it's not crazy. You can talk to the plants and they will talk back to you. If you want a very concrete example, a couple of years ago we had a drought. We had a drought. There was no water for months and months. The water I was pulling up from my well was salty. But I went to the plants every day and told them, you know, you can do it, you can make it, you're strong, you are loved. Many of these plants I did not have to water for up to 2 months at a time, and they grew to their full potential. There's a saying by Confucius, it says, the best fertilizer for a plant is the farmer's footprint. This means that the more often you are there in the midst of your garden, the more often you are there in the midst of your plants, giving them your love and your gratitude, telling them that they are wonderful and beautiful and that you are in a partnership with them, your plants will grow healthy and happy, and they might even talk back to you. But I guarantee it, give your energy to your plants every day, whether you're talking to them, playing music to them, or even just meditating in front of them and sending, gratitude and love to them. It will make a difference, I guarantee it. And when we are able to enter the spiritual relationship with the plants, with the soil, then they enter a spiritual relationship with us. And when humanity is able to produce food in harmony with nature, to farm in a way that recognizes that we are all one, that all of creation is connected, then we will begin to evolve. We will begin to heal all the problems that are ailing us today. So my friends, thank you so much for listening to me for the past 45 minutes. This is just a short introduction into spiritual agriculture. There's a question and answer afterwards. I hope to see you there and answer whatever questions you have. And if you just take one thing away from this talk, I want you to remember always, our relationship with the earth is everything. Our relationship with nature is everything. We need to be able to coexist and to together elevate all life on earth. And we can do this by creating a spiritual connection from our spirit to the spirits of nature. And Because of this, spiritual agriculture is truly one of the biggest and most important things that humanity needs today. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.